Hey, everybody, I'm Jorge, and welcome to our 2023 free agency special edition of Fourth and Frames on the Fantasy and Frames podcast. Tonight, we welcome Jim Coventry from Rotowire and Sirius Fantasy to discuss the fantasy football implications to the start of free agency in 2023. So sit back, relax, and get ready to have some fun. And like I said a moment ago, I'm Jorge Edwards. You can find me on Twitter at Jorge B. Edwards, along with my fellow analysts here from Fantasy and Frames, such as Stacy Perez, who you can find at Stacy_83, Perez 83, excuse me. Got, of course, Nate Markham. We all know Nate Markham. Welcome back, Nate. At Nate Markham, we got Chris Battistel, one of our new analysts here at FF Chris B. And with us tonight, we have a very special guest, a gentleman and a scholar in all things NFL, fantasy football, and in life too. You can find his work over on Rotowire and listen to him on Sirius Fantasy. He's everywhere, folks. Hell, he's on TikTok. I loved following you on TikTok this year, Jim. We follow you there under the account. I follow you personally. I'm talking about Mr. Jim Coventry. Welcome to the show, man.
Excited to be here. You guys have had me on the past. Always a pleasure. You guys know your stuff, and that's what matters to me. And that's why you had a great following. You do the work, and just coming on the show with you guys, I'm honored to be with a great team. Thanks.
Absolutely. Well, why don't you, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about the work you're doing, the work you've done, a little bit of your background so the fantasy and framers can get to know you better.
So I've been an analyst since 2008, been a bit of a while, playing the game since 94, been with Rotowire since 2016, and the Sirius opportunity is just phenomenal. Rotowire had put me on the show. I'm on weekends during the football season, so from July through February. Now the baseball guys are in, I get a little hiatus. If my hand starts to shake, I'm having withdrawal symptoms. That's probably what that is. That's why I'm so quick to take people's offers. Come on my show, please. Thank you. Yes, save me. Yes. So it's a great thing. I was blown away a couple months ago. I was nominated for Fantasy Football Writer of the Year, and they told me I was a finalist, but basically I'm a loser. So I lost. So yeah, I'm a loser. Yes, I'm with everybody else in the same boat. We all lost. So, but nonetheless, I was really blown away that I was considered for that. But otherwise, right now, it's just note-taking mode. We do a podcast each week, Wednesday for Rotowire, articles each week. But otherwise, the full steam ahead. Probably once the draft gets kicking, I'll probably be a lot more on social media. A little bit of a hiatus right now.
No, totally understand it. We're going to be putting these notes to good use on today's show. But before we get started on tonight's show, make sure to head over to our YouTube page, subscribe for more awesome fantasy football content from topics ranging from Dynasty and Redraft to DFS and, of course, IDP. And also make sure to head over to fantasyandframes.com, check out all our latest articles and our player rankings. So, 2023 free agency. We've had some moves made. So let's just jump right into it. Jim, why don't you start us off with a player that you want to talk about, and let's talk about them from, a fantasy standpoint as well as a real football standpoint.
We'll talk about D'Onta Foreman. He just signed with the Bears, and really 12 hours ago, I was really excited about Khalil Herbert. 5.7 yards per carry last year. The Bears, we know they have a bad line, but they run block well. They were near the top of the league in run blocking. So they can't pass protect to save their lives. But having that ability to run block, Khalil Herbert, though, would get very little work. He was the clear backup to Montgomery. I'm thinking, okay, maybe there's durability issues too. He did miss 4 games with limited work. But I thought the opportunity of him as an explosive back would have a great potential. We know Justin Fields, when we have that mobile quarterback, the threat freezes linebackers. So getting into the second level and doing damage is something that a running back has a great ability. And Herbert was over the 94th percentile in broken tackle rate and yardage after contact. But in comes D'Onta Foreman. Now, the writing is pretty much on the wall. We have a sledgehammer, 6 foot 235, and then we have Khalil Herbert, who's a much smaller back. To me, it's going to be pretty obvious. Herbert, I still think is the lead back, but I think they're going to get Foreman 8 to 12 carries a game. and he probably gets more work at the goal line than Herbert to preserve Herbert. But you know, Justin Fields will get plenty of work. So Foreman is kind of in no man's land. He was in a great spot last year in that even though he was mixing it up with Chuba Hubbard, he had opportunities for big games behind a good run blocking line. So this is a bad spot for Foreman. So unfortunately, I have him in that RB3 range right now in 12-team leagues, basically depth. But I don't think I can count that in week to week.
For Dynasty, is he somebody that is on your radar, or just somebody that you're just kind of like letting alone, let somebody else deal with him?
He's 27 right now, and I know he doesn't have a ton of mileage on the tires. Last year's 203 carries were the first big workload he's ever had, but he's a big back, and the aging will be problematic at some point too. So he's a depth piece in Dynasty as well. It literally, if you're an RB3 this year at 27 in redraft, your dynasty value can't be much higher than that. It actually is a tick lower because, again, it's a 1-year deal. And at that point, he's going to kind of pigeonhole himself into being a situational back.
Where we're talking about free agent signings, while we're not talking necessarily about, offensive linemen, I think one of the things that could potentially help, either Herbert or Foreman this year is the fact that the Bears went out and got Mike McGlinchey, who not the greatest pass blocker, but when it comes to run blocking, I thought he performed pretty well last year. So that could potentially help in that situation. I'm curious to see what happens there, to be honest with you. But I'm very interested in the fact that, you seem to be a little bit down on Herbert, given his efficiency, but with Foreman, just because of the opportunity there.
So I was very high on Herbert yesterday, as in I was telling people he could finish as a top 15 running back, being drafted about 24. I think Foreman puts enough of a hit in that. I still like her. I'm glad you brought that back to us because I never finished my thought on Herbert. So it's great you brought that up. I think Herbert is still a strong RB2. Now, he didn't get passing work last year. I want to say his targets were 12 to 18, top of my head. I don't remember what it was, low amount. But David Montgomery was a good receiver. So it may have just been that. I do hope they use him in the passing game some, but I do think Herbert's going to get enough work, and I believe he's explosive enough where I do think if you're putting him in the running back 20 to 22, 23 range, I think Khalil Herbert is still going to be a value pick there. He just lost that potential for the big upside I thought might be there.
Right. And of course, I misspoke. McGlinchey went to Denver, not Chicago. Let's thank you very much for talking about Foreman there. We got somebody joining us now. We got Courtney. Courtney, welcome to the show. One of our new analysts here at Fantasy and Frames. How you doing, Courtney?
What's up, guys? I'm good. How are y'all?
Doing well. Ready to talk some shop. Who do you want to talk about today that you're impressed with in terms of free agency and fantasy? Or are you impressed with?
I don't know. I don't know if I was impressed with him. I just kind of went for it because it hadn't been talked about yet. And I've already talked about Darren Waller and I've already talked about Derek Carr. So, by the way, Chris, love the Saints hat.
Thank you.
So I was just going to talk about Miles Sanders going to the Panthers.
All right, tell us about it.
Well, reaction from the NFL. We all knew it was going to happen, right? The Eagles have been having a running back by committee now, and, who was it going to be? Was it going to be Gainwell? Was it going to be Sanders? Was it going to be Jalen Hurts, right? So the fact that they let him go was no surprise to anyone. I think it was, always going to be this season, right? Everybody was like, he's out of there. He's out of there. So I don't think it was much of a shock to anyone. I think it was kind of a shock to go to the Panthers, at least to me. They got rid of Foreman. You were just talking about him, Jim, and they have old Chuba. But other than that, they don't have much. But then again, they don't have much in the receiving game either, right? So we're thinking with that one pick, the first pick, that they're going to go quarterback, right? That's the thought. So if you have a rookie quarterback, or if you have Andy Dalton throwing the ball, and Chris and I know from last year, Andy can't get that ball out that far, right? We know he can't get it out that far. So Miles will get a lot of volume as a Panther, getting that quick dump off if it's a quarterback or if it's Andy Dalton. But let's think about, last year he had his best season, coming off his best season. Let's see what I had. 1,169 yards as a Eagle, which is pretty darn good. But man, he's 25, and I know that's not old, but he is super injury prone, and he has been declining significantly in the receiving game since his rookie year in 2019. And unless he really steps his game up, I don't see this as a huge, yes, he's getting volume, but he's not going to be a running back one. I just don't see it. I don't see it being a running back one for you. Depending on how deep your bench is, I could see him being your running back 2 or 3, and he's a great person to slot in every week for that position. But I just think it's the Miles Sanders game again, and it's just a different team. It's just that trap, right? I kind of think it's a trap. That's what I think. I think it's a trap.
We need Admiral Akbar here to say it's a trap, just so we can release a pound drop. What are your thoughts on him in Dynasty? Obviously for redraft purposes, you're not too high on him. Is he somebody that, for Dynasty purposes, that even though he's had the recent struggles, like there's still hope maybe down the road, or because of the age?
Well, that with Dynasty, it's going to be he's going to get the volume. He's going to get the touches. And so, like I was saying with the whole quarterback situation that we really don't know where it's going to be. I think his stock slightly higher than it was with the Eagles being on the Panthers, because he is going to be fed the ball a lot. But again, we're still talking about the Panthers, right? So, I see him as definitely somebody. You could throw him on the trade block right now and see if there's somebody out there that really wants him. And there could be that person out there, right? There could be that person out there that's like, what? He's going to be the running back 1 in Carolina. This is going to be awesome. I need that running back 2 on my bench, to be able to play him on my team. So I could see him being, like I said, his stock has risen a little bit, going from the running back by committee to going here, because what does he have behind him? He has Chuba and he has Blackshear. He is going to be that guy. He is going to get the volume, but I don't think that he's somebody I would run out and go try to trade for unless I was really hurting at running back. Because like I said, he is 25. He will have a couple more years. It was 4-year, $25 million, give or take. So he's going to be there. And unless something crazy changes, they're going to take a quarterback with that first pick. So he will be the guy at least for this next year, and potentially the year after that in 2024. So I think, if you have him, throw him on the trade block and just see if anybody out there is like hurting and needing a running back. And if nobody bites, hold on to him, because he's going to give you points. He's going to get you consistent points week after week, right? He is. So for the Panthers, I think it's like a C, maybe a C+. If he's on your Dynasty team, throw him out there on the trade block. If he doesn't, hold on to him, because he will get you points this year. He's just not going to be your main guy.
Courtney bringing the fire. Look at you. That was fantastic.
Look, I had a beautiful day. I've been on the ski slopes all day long. I'm having a cocktail. Life is good right now. So let's talk football. I love it.
That's awesome. Well, look, we know you got plenty of stuff going on, and we appreciate you taking your time out of your evening to join us here to talk some fantasy football and some football in general. Thanks for hopping on, and we hope to see you on some more programming in the future.
Absolutely. Who dat? Go Saints. Whoop, whoop.
Who dat?
There are a lot of Saints fans now at Fantasy and Frame since we expanded, like an uncomfortable amount. It's kind of
I'm pretty comfortable with it, Jorge. Not gonna lie.
I bet you are, Chris. I bet you are. Let's talk about the next player here, and we brought somebody on here who's joining us. Got Rhett Manuel here. Rhett, what's going on, buddy?
How you doing, bud? How we doing tonight?
Doing great. I actually would like both you and Stacy to talk about our next player, because you both are pretty high on him. That, of course, is Jamal Williams, now heading to the New Orleans Saints. Stacy, why don't you start us off talking about Jamal Williams?
I will, Jorge. If you're going to refer to Jamal Williams, I'm going to need you to do it by his proper name, which is Swag Daddy. Thank you very much.
Swag Daddy, sorry.
Swag Daddy, that's right. That's his Twitter handle. That's not just a nickname that I came up with. But Rhett and I both loved him so much, and since we're virtual, we couldn't thumb wrestle for it, so we're going to tag team this one. So Jamal Williams, our beloved Swag Daddy, right, going from Detroit down on to New Orleans. As soon as I heard this news, I really thought, okay, do they know something about Kamara's legal situation? Are they preparing for him to be suspended? Are we going to have a resolution with that at some point? And that's why they're bringing in Jamal Williams. Maybe they're going to draft somebody too. Not sure, but that was just kind of my first thought there. So who knows? We'll see what happens with that. Probably get that resolved maybe before the season. Who knows? But as far as Jamal goes, our guy had league-leading 17 rushing touchdowns last year, 1,000-plus yard season. his best year ever. Bad news, it probably can only regress, right? I don't know how much better you can get from that. Historically, in his career, he's had around between 450 up to 600 so yards. But a surprising stat that I found out today was that he's always had above 13 touchdowns every year, which I just thought was just phenomenal. Another reason to love him, consistency, right? You know that he's going to be in there at that goal line. He's going to be getting those touchdowns. When you're looking at guys to put in, maybe as your RB2, maybe in a flex spot, you're going to say to yourself, okay, here's who I have, right? I've got Jamal Williams and I've got what other player, right? You know what Jamal Williams is going to do. You know he's going to produce for you. He's going to get those touchdowns for you. So for me, it's an easy, pop him in your lineup. You know exactly what you're getting and you can count on that every week. I actually did that last year. I had a situation where I had 4 running backs, rotating them in and out. Jamal was one of them. And I always felt comfortable putting him in there because I knew Detroit's going to use him. They want to get him those touchdowns. They want to get him those yards. Let's do it. So easy guy to throw in your lineup and feel really good about. I don't think that changes down in New Orleans at all. Their offense should be great this year. I mean, they've got Derek Carr. They've got Chris Olave. I don't have any issue bringing him from Detroit down onto New Orleans and having him be in that same role. Not at all. As far as Dynasty goes, I think, last year, right, he was at his highest value, his best season ever. He's coming off of that. If you have him and you're looking to trade to maybe get some draft capital, maybe get another piece to put in your lineup, now's the time to do it, right? Because as soon as the draft happens, we don't know what the Saints are going to do. We don't know who they're going to bring in. If they bring in another running back, maybe that lowers his value a little bit. So if you're in that situation in Dynasty where you're saying, okay, look, maybe I have to trade, our beloved swag daddy. I'd hate for you to be in that spot, but maybe you are. Now would be the time to do it. And if you're trying to get him, it's a good plug and play piece. Definitely. I mean, not somebody that you're building your team on. He's a little bit older, on the older end for a running back, but not a bad piece for your team either. Rhett, what do you think about our boy?
Okay, first off, I'm going to go ahead and say this is that easily one of my favorite personalities in the league. And just from a pure football perspective, the New Orleans Saints have been looking for that face of the franchise guy for the past couple of years. We've tried the Taysom Hill thing and, there's been Michael Thomas, he's hit or miss. He's all over the place. For me, if you're looking for a guy that you want to put in front of the media, just from a pure football perspective, Williams can be that guy, just strictly on a football perspective. Now in fantasy, I'll say this. I'm where Stacy was last year. I was in a league where I actually owned both DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, same backfield. Played them both every week because they offered different upsides. And the thing with Williams in New Orleans is this. Dating back to 2006 with the Sean Payton days, even when it was Reggie Bush, whoever it was, New Orleans has always leaned towards a 2 running back system. There's always been a pass catching quick guy. There's always been a thunder guy. Williams is going to fulfill that Mark Ingram role, that Pierre Thomas role that they've had for all those years. So I'm not worried about it in that perspective. I think what you can see, like Stacey said, is there another 1,000-yard season on the horizon? Probably not. And I wouldn't be shocked if New Orleans goes into the draft and gets somebody like a Tajay Spears in the 3rd round to have that compliment, because I also believe that Alvin Kamara, suspension or not, I believe this is going to be his last year in New Orleans. So in terms of Jamal Williams this year, whether it's a redraft format, I'd say fire off, fire at will, RB2 flex spot sort of guy. I agree with her. And, in Dynasty, 28 years old, you're looking at 1 year, maybe 2 years of premium value considering his age, but there was also a limited amount of wear on those tires in the league up until last year. So we'll see where it goes. But yeah, I'm just, in terms of the player and me being another homer for the uncomfortable Saints brigade Jorge has, I'm with it. Let's ride with Swag Daddy, baby.
Unreal. Very good points, both of you. Rhett, seriously, thank you very much for jumping on. Appreciate your time. Can you tell people where they can find what you got working on in the pipeline, or what you got previously worked on in the pipeline?
All right. I can be found at R Manual Sports on Twitter. Currently right now for Dynasty Player Profile Series. I'm working on my man Chiggy with the Titans. Still working on the last name. I'll figure that out as we go because, it's a little bit of a unique one. But, really excited about what we have going on. And just, as always, thank you. Happy to be here. Just humbled that you gave me this opportunity, man.
Absolutely. We look forward to seeing more of your work down the road. All right. That brings us now to our next player. Coincidentally, it's going to be where Jamal Williams is coming from, Detroit. I'm going to be talking about David Montgomery from Chicago to Detroit. When I saw this signing, I was a little perplexed. You got 3 years, $18 million. That's not the part that was perplexing. What was perplexing is I see this move, and I see this as a lateral move in a couple ways. One, you look at Montgomery and you look at Khalil Herbert the past couple of years, very similar in efficiency. It was more just an issue of opportunity. You saw last year, Montgomery getting the bulk of the carries, the bulk of the opportunity, the bulk of the snaps. There wasn't really that split that I think a lot of managers were hoping for after Herbert's rookie year. But obviously he's gone. Efficiency, like I said, very comparable. Metrics, very comparable, both in the receiving and running game. And now you have him go to Detroit, where when you look at their metrics, Swift and Montgomery, again, kind of comparable. I think I'd give Swift a little bit, the edge and explosive plays and breakaway plays and speed and elusiveness. But I don't know. I don't know if you're going to get the situation where Montgomery comes in and gets typecasted with the Jamal Williams role as just the goal line guy who's going to get in there and get you those touchdowns. I'm sure he's going to get his opportunities to score. Don't get me wrong. But, this move for fantasy purposes, it concerns me. Having two players on the same team with similar styles of play, this screams to me insurance policy. I think the way Montgomery and Swift run the ball, I think their style, I think that's what Detroit wants to do. I think they kind of landed into a good situation last year with Jamal Williams, like Rhett was alluding to and Stacey was alluding to, being fresh, having the ability, the efficiency in what he was doing. So I really truly think this is a kind of like a 1A, 1B situation for Swift and Montgomery. So for that being said, for redraft purposes, again, Swift for me is probably going to be ranked higher heading into draft season. But you run the risk of, the same old thing, potential injuries getting in the way, maybe taking a decreased workload because somebody else is riding the hot hand. For fantasy purposes, I think I would rather in redraft wait on Montgomery because of the similar skill sets, because of the similar efficiencies and the potential for more opportunity, just because we don't know where Swift is going to lie in terms of healthiness, being healthy or not being healthy. For Dynasty, again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about, similar situations in Chicago to now you have a similar situation in Detroit. I don't see him moving up too much or fluctuating too much in my rankings from last year. I kind of think both of these players with similar skill sets kind of, I don't want to say negate one another, but it concerns me. It concerns me a little bit. But if I had to pick one, I'd rather go after, it would be Montgomery in redraft. For Dynasty, man, that's tough. I mean, I think you still got to chase the upside, with Swift just because of the age. And the potential, I don't know. That's my thoughts there. Jim, I'm kind of curious to hear what you have to say about this.
Yeah, first of all, with Swift, it's interesting because he is a dynamically explosive player. But it's very clear that Dan Campbell does not want him to have heavy usage because when he was healthy last year and even the year before, he is just not giving him work. Now he gets him receiving work, and hopefully Dan Campbell keeps that part of the game because Swift actually scores double-digit PPR games in points in most games because of his receiving chops. So I think he has to keep him in that role. I don't think he wants him running the football a lot. So Montgomery's going to get a lot of grinder carries. I do worry about Montgomery. He has an 84th percentile broken tackle rate, which is phenomenal, but he only gets 50th percentile yards after contact. So he gets free, but he can't go anywhere with it. So he is your 4 yards in a cloud of dust kind of guy. There's no explosiveness. And I think, and I'll get out of this quick so Nate and Chris can get in here, but with Montgomery, I think the Lions saw him twice every year. and they saw Montgomery beat him up twice every year. But who doesn't beat him up, right? But I think they're like, oh, man, we like this Montgomery guy. I think they brought him in because they think he's something he's not. He's not explosive, and he's certainly not Jamal Williams. He's not a bruiser. He's more of a finesse back with a little power.
Nate, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, the biggest thing as far as a hit towards Montgomery for me is you're talking about a hyper-efficient Detroit Lions running game where, most fantasy points as a unit, despite only being the 13th most actual rushing attempts. And you have Chicago on the other end, who has the most rushing attempts in the league, and yet 17th, I think, 18th on a per game basis, eliminating Justin Fields from that equation. So you're asking, as Jim said, I will give you 4 yards in a cloud of dust. I'll be generous and say 4.2. Onto a team that utilizes efficiency isn't always a solid lateral move, as you put, Jorge. I think it is overall kind of weigh the balance. You're like, all right, less work, maybe more efficient because Dan Campbell utilizes the running back position maybe better instead of just pounding into the back of the offensive line. But Swift is always going to be Swift. With health, I'm still investing. It's a combination of both what Jim, you, and Jorge said in terms of if you can't beat us, join us, or if you're beating us, join us, as well as insurance policy.
Chris, what are your thoughts on his dynasty value? Montgomery's, that is.
Dynasty wise, he's still pretty young. He hasn't hit that age cliff for running backs in terms of dynasty. You give me 3/4 to 2/3 of Jamal Williams production for David Montgomery, and I'll take it. I'll plug him into a flex. I'll use him as a player to fill bye weeks and leading up into the playoffs. So I don't hate it. DeAndre Swift's a guy like that was mentioned that can't stay healthy on a every week basis. So his potential value, just like Jamal Williams, can skyrocket come week 8 up into the fantasy playoffs.
Nice. And let's stick with you, Chris. Let's talk about a wide receiver here that's moved up to New England from winning a Super Bowl championship, fresh off of that championship. Let's talk about Juju Smith-Schuster. Why don't you?
Not the sexiest group of free agent wide receivers, but in my opinion, Juju Smith-Schuster is the belle of the ball. He signed a 3-year, $33 million contract with the Patriots, a nice pay increase for the Chiefs, where he led the wide receiver room in receptions with 78 and total yards with 933. I think with the role that Travis Kelce played in that offense, if he wasn't a factor for the Chiefs, those numbers would be a little more bumped up. He only had the 3 touchdowns, so he wasn't a big factor in the red zone for the Kansas City Chiefs. My biggest thing is, can he be that wide receiver 1 for the New England Patriots? Can he adapt to the Patriot way? We know how much of a personality Juju Smith-Schuster is. Is he going to be able to dial that back to fit into what the Patriot way is? And that's just not making it about yourself and putting the New England Patriots first. So that's one of the big question marks that I have for Juju Smith-Schuster going into the year. The Patriots, they lost Jacoby Myers. They lost Nelson Aguilar. There's about 157 vacated targets available for Juju going into the year. So, and Jacoby Myers held an 18.8% target share for the Patriots last season. And then diving into the Patriots offense, they had a 6.8 yards per attempt with their passing game with Mac Jones, which would favor a player like Juju Smith-Schuster, who has an average depth of target of about 7.6. And then with the ball in his hands, you know that he can get the yardage after the catch. 81% of the Patriots passing attack last season came short of the sticks. 81% in an offense that will favor Juju Smith-Schuster in the passing game. I'm kind of excited. I got him as a low-end wide receiver 2 right now, with the capabilities of having that high-end wide receiver 2 ceiling. He'll be a nice wide receiver 2 on your lineups, a nice flex spot. The Patriots last season, top 10 in play action percentage. And now they're bringing in Bill O'Brien to run that offense. He's coming from Alabama. With his time with the Patriots, when he was the offensive coordinator with the Patriots, they ran a pretty predominant play action offense to get those intermediate wide receivers open and into that open space. So it's an offense that's going to highlight his strengths instead of an offense like the Chiefs that didn't really highlight what he can do. He's not an elite burner, so he's not going to beat you downfield, but he does have good speed off the line, tied with the concepts and passing attack that Bill O'Brien's going to bring for the New England Patriots. I'm pretty excited for what he's going to do, and I'm pretty excited for him to be that wide receiver one for Mac Jones. Stacy, what do you got on Juju? What do you think about the signing? I know it's there's a lot of hit and miss information out there on him.
Well, I'm just glad that Juju already got his ring because he sure ain't getting one with the Patriots this year. But no, I really like Juju. He's a great personality. I think he's a fun player to watch. He's a fun player to root for. But I think this is a good move for the Patriots. I mean, like their offense has been just very meh, over the last couple of years. It's just not been great. So I think bringing in Juju is going to just give them a little bit of a boost there. And I'm glad to see that they finally have somebody competent running their offense rather than Matt Patricia and Joe Judge.
It was bad.
My goodness. Shots fired, right? That was rough, but it deserved. So I'm glad to see Juju there. I think that's a good move for him, and I'm glad he's getting paid. So.
Yes, he is.
Yep.
Very nice, very nice. Well, it wouldn't be Fantasy and Frames if we didn't start talking some IDP. And who better than our director of IDP to get us going here? Nate, Bobby Okereke, former Indianapolis Colt, now with the Giants. What are your thoughts on him?
That's what I need. One of those, I don't know what you would call that, where the bouncing ball goes as you enunciate the player's name. And I want to make sure that we all get this right because it is. And it's went from Okereke. And actually, that wasn't incorrect, technically, because when his family migrated here, from Nigeria, that was the one thing his father they wanted to assimilate into an easier name to say. And so he went with Okereke. And now Bobby has decided he wants to actually make sure that people know. And so it's, Okereke. And the emphasis is on that K-A-Y, the last thing. That's huge as far as his enunciation goes. And so I will do my best this season to pay tribute to him and make sure I say it correctly. And I love the move. I mean, here you go to a Wink Martindale defense that immediately has had issues at the linebacker position when Jalen Smith is your go-to one. Obviously, that's a major concern for me, at least from an IDP standpoint. I don't know if it's a huge step from one to the next. Obviously, you don't have to worry about a healthy Shaq Leonard or Zaire Franklin to compete with. You don't have much in the way. Micah McFadden as a young dynasty aspect will line up on the inside, but immediately here you go where Okereke had the seventh most solo tackles last year, just under the 100 mark, another 52 on top of that. Talk about two back-to-back seasons with Indy where he's had over 85%. I think it was 85 in 2022 and then 95 in 2021. So he should maintain that type of I would say snap share, probably at least I would say barring injury 95 plus. Coverage is the key with him. That's the one thing that he's really, really improved upon is solid protection, solid coverage ability. The one thing in a Wink Martindale offense or defense, is to be reliable and accountable. And the one thing I'm interested to kind of see this year is exactly how he utilizes him. We've seen a little bit of an uptick in pass rush snaps from the linebacker position and properly disguised, which is always the key if you want to get a top and eclipse that 6 tackles for a loss just in terms of maybe a few extra sacks. The coverage will be there. I'm not expecting much more in the way of, you get the occasional interception. But what he's done from an IDP standpoint is he finished last year as the LB19, according with our Fantasy and Frame scoring. He's around there in about every scoring format because his tackle heavy upside always puts him in that position about just a shade under 14 points per game. I mean, like I said, put the numbers together. Jim, 150 tackles, 6 tackles for a loss, 6 pass breakups, 20% tackle rate versus the run last year, which is incredible. And we have to look at that Giants offensive side of the ball and think, okay, here's a Giants offense that could move the ball better, another year together, possibly incorporate a little bit more of the coverage ability, which, some of those splash plays could come into effect. I see it more as a lateral move just because I already had him as kind of an LB2 that I'm comfortable with. I think from a dynasty perspective, he's 26. He'll be 27 years old. So he's more than capable of maintaining this stability for the next few years. And I think that he's kind of, I don't want to say underappreciated, but I think he is. I think the most appreciating aspect about him so far is the chaos that comes with the last name of Okereke to Okereke. And I think it should be warranted that it's this play more so than just his name. And you want to talk about, we said this earlier, guys, if you can't beat him, join him. Let's remember week 17 last year against the Giants. What did he do? He had 17 tackles in that game. So I don't expect 17 tackles a game. That might be a record for a season, but I do expect 100+ solo 150 solo assist would be a pretty good floor, I think, or a ceiling. Hell, average.
Boom shakalaka!
Whoa, I got my own little drop.
Yes, you did. I have my stream deck all set up here with all these funny drops now. And there's nothing I could say, and I quite frankly, probably a lot of us could say, that could top what you just did. So,
well, you can say whatever you want.
Okay. No, I totally agree with you. Gator J's in our private comments. Wow, was not expecting that. No, you're right. From a fantasy standpoint, like we talked about on Shoot the Gap this past week, we of course have adopted our own Fantasy and Frames IDP scoring, but 13.9 points per game, even with Fantasy Pro scoring right around that number, just has been a consistent high volume tackler. Going again to the Giants, one of the people last year for New York on the defensive side of the ball, Julian Love, assisted a lot in run support just because of the lack of depth there at the linebacker position. Now they bring in Okereke, who can get around. You mentioned Micah McFadden, and Julian Love has not been re-signed by the Giants, and there's talk that he's actually visiting Seattle now, and we don't know what's happening with Ryan Neal in Seattle. So there's a lot of moving parts here on this defense on the middle and back end, which could basically open up a lot of opportunity for tackle volume. So I'm excited about it, Okereke. Loving the situation. I agree with you, LB2, with definitely the opportunity for LB1 upside.
Sure.
Jim, let's go to you next. Who do you like to talk about?
Boy, I got to know what put in the doc. I don't remember what I put in the document. Do you have? Oh my God, that's who I have left up your document for you. I'll talk about any player. I didn't know how this is going to go, so any player we're going to talk about here. Let's see here.
Jim, nobody knows how this is going to go. I don't know if we know how this is going to go.
Well, how about the first big?
Oh yeah. Okoronkwo. We'll talk about him going to the Browns. Now, understand. My whole analysis is I study players from like an NFL side. So when I'm not an IDP player, but when I break down my games throughout the season, I know every defender. So they might put up these great gaudy numbers for IDP, but I know what they're going to be able to do from an NFL standpoint. So when I break down, I know this offensive player will have an advantage in this specific area. So my analysis, you guys could throw the IDP stuff on the top after I kind of go through, a little bit of my deal, and because you guys led the better reference to that, but that's definitely the way I think we should go with that. So when we talk about Okoronkwo going to Cleveland, this was an amazing deal for them because, first of all, obviously we know we got Myles Garrett, and Myles Garrett creating all the havoc that he's able to create, and that is the linchpin to that defense. And there are games where obviously he gets so much attention he's not on. And Jadeveon Clowney was really a great run defender who actually was able to do decently as a pass rusher because of the force of Garrett. Well, now we have a dude that's a really good pass rusher. He can bring the heat. He is going to have phenomenal opportunity. No defense can go in, and no offensive line or protection could go into a game saying, that's where we got to put our attention. It's always going to be Myles Garrett. So whether they're stunting, whether they are just letting Okoronkwo go from his side, he is going to have favorable situations. And we already know that the secondary in Cleveland is good. They're not as great as we hope they would be, but they're good. And they're good enough that it gives the pass rush some time to get home because they can cover. Receivers aren't getting open instantly. So therefore, the pass rush is going to be devastating. I could see Okoronkwo coming in this season and putting up 15 sacks for them. Totally could see that happening. So that's kind of my breakdown on him. And I think it just starts and ends with the pass rushing ability. I'm not worried in his case about where he stands as a run defender. Not really worried about that. He's not a great run defender, but this is what they brought him in for, to bring heat on the passer.
You know, and that's the one thing with Cleveland, and Jorge, you can attest this, is that's where, you know, with Clowney, that was the one thing that I think everybody, expectation wise, for people that don't dive into it as deep as you do, Jim, and others, is that I think they were expecting Clowney to be this pass rusher, when in fact he's actually more for, you know, setting that edge and being a good run stopper. And it didn't serve Cleveland as well as I think they had maybe thought it was going to. And we love Okoronkwo. OGOK is how I started saying it, because I said his name every single week and I got sick of trying to stammer over my words, so I just shortened it. I don't think he's adopted it quite yet. We'll see if he turns him and like Stacy, you know, they credit for Swaggy, which
Swag Daddy.
Swag Daddy. I'm sorry, Swaggy P is in the NBA. Holy crap! I like to cross reference, go multiple sports. But yeah, he is, Jim. I'm excited for somebody that there's a chance that he's not even really a highly drafted person, maybe as a DL4 who has that impact to put up double-digit sacks. I mean, the amount of attention needed to go to Myles Garrett is going to be incredible. And, and just, you know, the key one thing would be, obviously, it would be nice to see them have an offense that can generate enough points where they have other teams needing to pass higher. And I think his second year with Deshaun Watson will give us that. Dalvin Tomlinson, huge move up the middle as well. He's going to fill that interior, and that's going to even create more of a mismatch for OGOK. So huge defensive line moves. I really like that pick out by you, Jim. That's very under the radar.
Can I add one real quick thing about, you mentioned Watson, and I'm trying to come up with my definitive take on Watson and why he didn't perform last year. And the one thing I do know is his layoff, getting reacclimated to the speed of the game, sometimes is something that is not talked about and it's really undersold. And I think a lot of the errors he made, he was not processing the speed. I think now with finishing last season and with an off season, I really do think he'll be much closer to the quarterback that we saw during those days in Houston, because that speed does come back. You don't lose that permanently unless you're older. And obviously he is in his mid to upper 20s. So that's not an issue. He should get that back.
Yeah.
No, 100%. And Nate, I love how you hit on Dalvin Tomlinson. I think that right there, that's the pin right there that I think is going to help, you know, take on some blocks there and really free up Myles Garrett and OGOK to wreak some havoc. You know, not speaking of wreaking havoc and not speaking of fantasy football at all, we're partnering up with Trophy Smack this year. Awesome segue, I know.
Work it in however you can get it.
Exactly. Partnering up with Trophy Smack, you know, they have the great titles. They have great title belts, trophies, whatnot. But what they have now is something called Wall Smack. That is some great digital artwork you can throw up on your well, you know what? Gator J behind the glass, why don't you tell the folks more about that?
What is happening, everybody? This is your boy, Fantasy J77. I'm here to tell you about Wall Smack by Trophy Smack, the most customizable metal wall plaques you can have. From celebrating life's epic moments, anniversaries, birthdays, whatever. Oh, those wins you get from fantasy football. Absolutely. You can literally customize any of these images on the Trophy Smack website using the code FRAMES10. 10% off right now. You have the pictures in your phone. The code is FRAMES10. Use it.
No, seriously, folks. See, Nate's plugging the Wall Smack stuff there. Love it. So, full disclosure, I'm looking at my wall right here, and all I see is like spackle everywhere because I don't have the greatest like level measuring eye, and so when it's like ding, 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 ding. Oh no, it's crooked. I have to like readjust the nail, and then so like just holes galore, spackle galore. What's great about these things is that they're all magnetic, so you don't have to worry about any any damage on your walls there. My wife is totally loving the fact that I'm admitting to the fact that I'm destroying the walls left and right. But anywho, let's get back on topic here, and let's talk about the newest tight end for the New York Giants. Stacey, we got Darren Waller.
Darren Waller the baller. Although, after the last few years with him being so injured, I kind of think that nickname might go to his wife now since she plays for the Vegas Aces. So
Nice.
she might be Waller the baller at this point. But Darren Waller, so I'm going to give you guys a vibes breakdown here on this move because, he's been so injured the past few years. I don't really love the numbers. So I want to talk about that. So here's what we're going to do. Darren Waller, right? He has now automatically become the best pass catcher on the Giants offense, right? Wandale's hurt. Love Wandale, but we don't know when he's coming back. And then who else is Daniel Jones throwing to? Isaiah Hodgins? Sterling Shepard? I mean, no disrespect to Isaiah Hodgins, who I actually really liked towards the end of the year, but come on. So immediate upgrade to this offense. Obviously, caveat, as long as he can stay healthy, right? Because that's been the whole thing throughout his career. Can he stay healthy? So if he can stay healthy, I love this for their offense. I think it's a great boost. He's, because of those injuries, right? He doesn't have as much wear on those tires. So I like this for him. Tight ends, right? They are usually a quarterback security blanket. And unless they get more guys, obviously, if they get more guys, through the draft or through, more free agent signings, whatever, then if nobody else is around, if there are all these lesser guys that they're throwing out there with Daniel Jones, he's going to go to Darren Waller. He should have a great season. He's going to go to him early, often, and I just think his stock is rising. I see him as kind of being one of those, if you can't get those top tier tight ends, your Kelsey, your Andrews, some people are saying Hawkinson this year, maybe, probably another, that's probably a chat for another day. But if you can't get one of those guys, why not go after Waller? I mean, he's going to be with this offense. And I also saw something, and I don't know if you guys knew this, but Brian Daboll used to be a tight end coach, right? So why not take that experience, and I'm sure he probably will, and use that to bring Darren Waller and get him integrated into this offense and really see what he can do, see what he can bring to the table. As far as dynasty perspective, kind of what I'm thinking is, he's here, he's with this new team, fresh start, new offense, probably at a really high value at this point. So if you're looking to maybe get some draft capital, get some other guys on your team, you've got Waller, and you say, maybe I've got a younger tight end that I think I can grow with a little bit here. Maybe I can trade Waller. Now's the time I think you should do it. Get out there, see what you can get for him. If you don't have one of those top guys, though, and you're, looking at, okay, well, I can get Waller from somebody, or maybe I can roll the dice with one of our rookie guys that's coming out, which I really think there's probably only about 4 rookie guys that you're even going to be looking at in Dynasty. Me personally, I don't love rookie tight ends. I want them to mature a little bit. I want them to grow a little bit. Give me a tight end in year 3 or 4, and that's when I'm going to like them. So if you have the opportunity to get Waller in your Dynasty league, I think you should definitely do that now. But really excited for him. I hate how it turned out. He gets married and 10 days later he gets shipped off to New York. So that was the timing on that was terrible. But excited for him for the season. I think this is going to be a really good fit for him.
Yes, definitely boo Josh McDaniels for a lot of things, especially
right?
that.
Yeah, did you see his wife kind of clapped back and was like, that's because you weren't invited, Josh McDaniels.
Love it. Before, I know, Nate, you got to roll out pretty soon. But before you go, I just was hoping you could talk to us a little bit about one IDP player that is now near and dear to my heart, Mr. Cody Barton.
Man, talk about a not a turn, because he was one of Fantasy and Frame's darlings last year going into the season because of the just the potential upside of playing time in Seattle. Talk about a resurgence, or not a resurgence. That sounds like he had surged at one point prior. He did not. He had 95 tackles in his first 3 seasons combined. But talk about a 2022 136 total, 15th in the NFL, mind you. 2 sacks, 6 passes defense, 2 interceptions. And I mean, probably the bigger name is Cole Holcomb, leaving and joining the Pittsburgh Steelers, which at some point I'm sure we will talk about. But Cody Barton has ginormous shoes to fill. alongside John Bostic, but an opportunity that is wonderful. I mean, here's the Commanders. It takes me a second to say so, Jorge. I'm trying to work through my brain. My old brain still doesn't pick up the names as fast. I have to check off the R word and then check off the football team. But they, third fewest yards per game last season, behind the Eagles and the 49ers. So here is a Washington team that is already upscale as far as like wanting to bring in their foot off the gas as far as coverage ability goes. They allowed 191 yards per game. So from an IDP as well as Jim says, a real football standpoint, sometimes the two do go hand in hand. It was a good football move to fill. I think it's a bigger IDP move because Cody Barton's not filling Cole Holcomb's shoes. I'm sorry. I don't believe so personally. People can say what they want. I think that we will see exactly, but Jordan Brooks wasn't the best linebacker in real football. He just is a great IDP. And so the two side by side, we'll get to see what Cody Barton really has in store. Jorge, I kind of want to get, on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you for Barton joining the team?
So one of the things Barton said during his introductory press conference is one of the things, or the main reason why he decided he wanted to come to Washington, is because the coaching staff told him, you will play exclusively in the middle, which is all he had real success in. He wasn't that great in coverage in Seattle. For goodness sakes, he lost his starting role last year for a good chunk of the season until they started just committing him to just being in the middle, taking him out of coverage packages. You're really hoping that the tandem from a real football perspective of him and Jamin Davis can be able to handle things either up the middle or in coverage. I agree with you that this for me screams an IDP, definitely an IDP buy for me in redraft. I definitely want to get, he's going to be encroaching that LB2 territory just because of the high tackle volume, because he will be restricted in that run stopping role. You don't have to worry about him breaking off in coverage and potentially losing whoever it is that he's tracking. I'm excited for that for IDP. I agree with you though. He's not Cole. He's not Cole
Holcomb is his name.
No, the one who left.
Cole Holcomb.
No, thank you. Sorry.
God.
He's not. Wow. Yeah, he is not Cole Holcomb.
What a fan! What a fan!
Well, he's not a Commander anymore, Nate. He's a Steeler now.
He just leaves the brain. He's gone.
I don't have to remember him anymore. So, maybe in a draft. But anywho, Nate, seriously, thank you very much for coming on. I know you're super busy. Why don't you tell everybody what you're working on during the off season?
Yeah, it's as Jim alluded to earlier about the transition to the baseball season through Rotowire and everything. That's me as well. And so I work with the group at Reliever Recon, where we Greg Jewett, who leads the helm, had come over from Fantasy Alarm. He's with the Athletic, him and I, and then Aaron Paggs, old fantasy and framer. Eric Samolsky, sorry, Jim, he's an FSWA award winner.
Yes.
I love Jim. He knows if you can't give shit to your friends, who can?
Please do.
Exactly.
Keep it on.
And next year, watch, Jim's he'll have plenty. I promise you by that point. But yeah, so Eric's on there, and then our own bullpen guru as well. So if you want to get into fantasy baseball at any point, I know this is a football and podcast, but Lord knows we do the Lord's work, as they say, because it's a stupid niche. I go from IDP to relief pitching. I need some of that Chardonnay or whiskey or whatever it is. But
both.
Both. Exactly. It was really good seeing you, everybody, actually. Nice getting to go with, Stacy and Chris for the first time, sharing a screen. Gator in the background. I'll see you next time.
See you, Nate.
Bye, guys.
Chris, let's go to you next. I haven't heard from you in a bit. Let's talk about the newest Denver Bronco here. Let's talk about Samaje Perine. What are your thoughts on him?
Yes, sir. Samaje Perine going from the Cincinnati Bengals, where he spent most of his time, to the Denver Broncos, a 2-year, $7.5 million contract, $1 million in incentives. And we got Sean Payton going over there. He was retired all last season. He's now with the Denver Broncos. And what's one way he's going to fix Russell Wilson is taking the ball out of his hands and giving it to the running back. So Denver gets a solid stopgap option at the position, which they were shallow at last season. Javonte Williams, although he was reported that he could return for week 1, there was reports at the combine. I think it was Matthew Berry who said that Javonte Williams will not be ready for the first few weeks of the upcoming season. So Samaje Perine is going to fill that role. He's a solid third down pass catcher, blocker, especially for Russell Wilson. Through the free agency market, they've added some big offensive linemen. They got Mike McGlinchey there, Ben Powers. They signed Chris Manhertz from the Jags. He's a big-time blocker at tight end. They got the fullback from the Chiefs, Michael Burton, who was second highest run blocker according to PFF on the past season. So that's a big one for the Denver Broncos. The team is built to run, and adding Samaje Perine to that backfield is going to help that situation. Sean Payton's philosophies obviously are going to follow him to Denver. He's got that West Coast style offense that saw his running backs when he was with the New Orleans Saints rank in the top 5 in targets. And we know that Samaje Perine can handle a full workload, not only running the ball, but catching the ball as well. When he spelled Joe Mixon, when Joe Mixon battled some injuries last season, he finished as RB2, RB9, and RB6. That's 3 back-to-back weeks of RB1 production. So if he is playing as the lead running back for the Denver Broncos heading into next season while Javonte Williams is still getting healthy, Samaje Perine is a guy in redrafts that you're going to be able to get at the back end of your drafts if you are a hero RB or zero RB drafter like myself. Samaje Perine is a guy that should be on your radar. He's got a 73.8 PFF pass blocking grade out of running backs with a minimum of 20% of the snaps. That puts him at RB5. So Sean Payton's going to use him, and he's gonna ride him hard. He's 27 years old, 5'11", 240 pounds. He's a big boy. He doesn't have that top end speed, doesn't have that breakaway speed, but he can get the job done when asked on. So, and then Dynasty, again, a guy that you're going to be able to draft late in your Dynasty, mid to late rounds in those teens. Samaje Perine is a guy that you're going to want to have on your radar this upcoming fantasy season, even if the Denver Broncos do draft a running back, which most people have them doing coming up to this next NFL draft.
Jim, before we get into your next player, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Samaje Perine.
So the one thing, and I love Chris's points on him, remember this. Samaje Perine is going from a Bengals team that saw the most 2 high shells in the league. Defenses were terrified of Jamar Chase and to a lesser degree T. Higgins. And so defenses had to go way back. Middle of the field, there was a lot of open space to run. And what Samaje Perine, and Chris, you were all over this, he runs hard, and if he gets that space at the second level, he takes advantage of it. And the screen passes, Joe Burrow figured out, well, man, when everybody's going back, and the pass rush coming, I dump it off, and we get good gains. So he had that going. It's going to be a different ball game in Denver. Now, you're right about them adding to the line. And McGlinchey's a good run blocker, better than a pass blocker, which helps. Ben Powers actually graded better as a pass blocker, but I think he'll be fine run blocking in for Sean Payton here. So, you're right that opportunity should be there, but I'm very concerned that teams are going to compress and dare Russ to beat them because I don't think anybody fears Russell Wilson anymore. So that's the only concern I see, Chris, but I do like the points you made, and I could see that happening as well.
Yeah, I'm hyped for it.
Nice. All right, Jim, who do you want to talk about next?
Yeah, I think a lot of people in these 2 tight end and tight end premium leagues, I should say, they're going to get real excited about Hayden Hurst going to the Panthers. And I want to throw a little bit of water on that because we got to be concerned. Again, we just talked about Samaje Perine with the Bengals. Well, Hayden Hurst was in an optimal situation because as we referenced and how defenses approach them, it was be very terrified of Jamar Chase. Cover back. The middle was always open, hence screens to Perine and Mixon. Hayden Hurst in the middle of the field, occasionally Tyler Boyd. Hayden Hurst caught plenty of passes, and he put up good numbers. CJ Uzama put up good numbers 2 years ago. Well, and matter of fact, Hurst had 414 yards in missing 4 games. That was a good season. But he was only 21st percentile yards after the catch. He's a catch and fall guy. Now, in Carolina, the case could be made, oh, well, they got to throw the ball at somebody. Terrace Marshall is going to be good. Shi Smith is not good, but they probably are going to get somebody else to bring in there. It could be a veteran stopgap. It could be somebody in the draft. I don't think there's any point where the offense is going to funnel through Hayden Hurst. So I know we're talking about a guy that's, a tight end too, but that people that may consider overdrafting him, I'm going to put him well outside the top 20 tight ends. I don't see upside. I see a decent, maybe small floor, but don't go chasing last year. It's not happening again.
Sorry, rookie move there. No, very good points. Very good points. The last person we're going to talk about today is going to be what I think is the feel-good story of NFL free agency. How can you not root for this person? I'm talking about Geno Smith, folks. When I think about what he did last year, and then the contract he got this year, hell yeah, way to go, Geno. Let's rattle off some of his accomplishments last year. And for fantasy, he was a QB 10 in points per game. He had the 8th most passing yards amongst all quarterbacks. He had the 9th best passer rating overall, the 4th most touchdown passes. He had the 2nd highest passer rating on passes of 20 yards or more. He had the 6th fastest time quarterback release with the ball. So he wasn't causing a lot of sacks. He was getting the ball out. He was being efficient. And, all of us were concerned. I would like to, I don't want to say all of us, but there a large majority of us were concerned. Like, what does this mean for Metcalf? What does this mean for Lockett? What does this mean for this offense as a whole? You lose Russell Wilson. You lose all these different parts. Geno Smith wasn't declared a starter until I want to say the week before the season started, because everybody was like, oh, it's Drew Lock's show. We saw, what didn't happen. And then, it's week 1 against Denver, and all of a sudden Geno's looking pretty good here. Okay, Russell Wilson's not. That's another story. But Geno's looking good. He had the infamous, somebody, didn't write me, I don't write back. I forget the quote, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, they write him off, but he didn't write back.
There you go. That's it. Right there.
Drew Lock wrote back though. That was the problem.
Could they find Drew Lock? Do they know where he is?
I think they just re-signed him. Actually,
He re-signed. Yeah, he re-signed.
I saw that.
Oh, good for him.
Good for. I like Stacey's enthusiasm. Good for him. From a redraft perspective, I feel about Geno Smith like I do with Kirk Cousins. When I think about these two quarterbacks, the thought that pops in my head is that'll do, that'll work. I'm okay with that. These quarterbacks are going to do just enough to get you what you need. And more often than not, they're going to help keep you in games versus lose you games. So I'm totally okay, taking that 0 QB approach, or late round QB approach, excuse me, and waiting for Geno if he's available that late, and just using him, throughout the season. Nothing's changing in Seattle. They're not losing key pieces, along the offensive line. They're not losing key. In fact, they're improving, getting the running back, the rookie running back from last year. He's going to have another year of experience. Just a lot of good pieces there at Seattle. Love the upside for Geno Smith this year. I don't, do I say he maxed out on what he could potentially do going forward? I don't know. I guess we'll find out in the next 3 years, right? But the fact that he's able to get the yardage, the fact that he's efficient with the ball, he's quick with the ball, and he has the playmakers, totally sold on him for redraft purposes. For Dynasty, see, that's a different thing. I'm not moving to acquire Geno, especially like in a 1 QB league. When I was over on DLF, great website, great resource. I was looking at trade value, rookie pick trade value, and some of them are like late first round in 2 QB leagues or super flex leagues. That's a little bit too rich for my blood. So, like I said, for redraft, I'm good with it. But for Dynasty, if I have them, great. If I have them in a 2 QB, I'm even happier. But as far as going out to acquire, not really on my list of things to do, but very happy about what happened with him. Very happy he got the contract. Very happy for success. And yeah, so that's pretty much gonna wrap us up here tonight. Jim Coventry, who you can find at Jim Coventry NFL. Sir, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule to join us. We got to have you on more often. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was great hearing all of your insights. I always learn from people in the community, and each of you had something very beneficial. Thank you.
Absolutely. Gator J, you want to jump in here?
I'll head out.
Yeah, no, Jim, don't go nowhere. Don't go nowhere.
Oh,
don't go nowhere.
gotcha.
Don't go nowhere. So I dropped a few questions in the chat that I did not want to pull up because of the content that y'all were putting out there. So I want to back up a little bit. And I want to go back to something that Stacy asked a question on, and it was basically, is Carolina the worst offense right now in the NFL going into the draft? So, Jim, if you could elaborate a little bit more on, are they the worst?
They have to be. The offensive line is really good, though. So, yes, today they're bad, but they're drafting a quarterback at 1. And if they moderately hit, and if they even take a third-round receiver, or if they still take a dip in the pool, like I said, or maybe a retread at receiver, nobody great. Terrace Marshall looked like he belonged last year. Now, quarterback issues didn't show what he really could have done. I do think they are, as you say, worst offense. But with that offensive line, it's not going to take a whole lot to get them to move up 4 or 5 spots.
I think that's fair. Stacey, you got anything to add to that? I mean, that was your question. I'm sorry I stole your question from the chat. So I want to give you a fair chance to ask the question.
No, that was just, I was just kind of, when we were talking about, Carolina, I was just kind of wondering, like, are they, I was thinking about it, I was like, who, Terrace Marshall, Shi Smith, yikes. Like, are they really? I was like, yeah, they've got to be the worst, right? That's, yeah.
Tight ends, horrible.
Yeah, and that's exactly. I was like, I was like, oh, Tommy Tremble. Yeah, wow, that's rough.
Yeah, so
Chris is shaking his head because he's a Saints fan. He's like, yes, they are the worst.
I agree with it all.
He's so like, I hope they stay that way.
Another question that I thought of as y'all were talking was, Jim, you were talking about the defensive alignments against Cincinnati this past year with you got Higgins, you got Chase, you got Boyd, you got all that. So can Denver do the same thing with Judy Sutton and Patrick with their new lineup?
They can't. And the thing is, Jamar Chase is such an incredible level of speed above other players. We could time speed and say it's close. Forget it. Jamar Chase terrifies defenses. And also Joe Burrow terrifies defenses. And that's the two things that force the amount of cover 2 that they saw, even more than Patrick Mahomes. It was more because of that devastating weapon. When you move over to Denver, yes, Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton are good players, but they don't put fear in any defenses. You could play a good man coverage corner on them and take your chances. I think there is no respect for Russell Wilson anymore. He can get the ball downfield. Sure, anybody can throw the ball 50 yards, but I don't think he has the ability to get it into tight spaces. Teams would rather pressure him and put more bodies up. Defenses are not going to go with a pass-first approach when they're defending Russell Wilson.
And I can agree with that. I do believe with Sean Payton, he has done something in this offseason to bolster that offensive line, to give Russell Wilson a little bit more time. So we shall see. I was one of those ones last year with this Russell Wilson trade. I was completely out. I didn't think this offense was going to click like everybody thought it was going to. So we shall see this year. Jim, I greatly appreciate you, sir, for answering those few questions. Chris, anything to add to this?
What's going on with Jimmy G, and why is Tom Brady going to be a Raider?
Stop it. Stop it now. Just stop.
Let him stay retired.
What's that?
So they're the West Coast Patriots.
Yeah, exactly. I know there was a hiccup with the Jimmy G signing. They were supposed to present him today. They didn't present him. I didn't hear any news about the signing, and the contract wasn't official. So I don't know what the Raiders are going to do at the situation at quarterback.
It's like The Hangover. Is he lost in Vegas?
Yeah, exactly.
Is he on a rooftop?
Wait. We got to find Mike Tyson. Make sure there's not a line involved. What are we doing?
Love it.
No,
Love it.
good.
Well, folks, thank you very much for all you all who have tuned in. For those who are listening on, wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, subscribe. Let us know more of what you want to hear. Let us know what you think. Don't forget to head over to our YouTube channel, like, subscribe. We definitely appreciate you looking at all the content that we're putting out there, as well as head over to fantasyandframes.com for all of our article and rankings. Jim, again, thank you so much. Stacy, Chris, both of you putting out great fantasy football content. You can catch Stacy on our podcast for Dynasty 365. She'll be hosting the next couple of weeks, so that's going to be really exciting. Chris, looking forward to more of your rookie prospect profile articles and videos. So everybody, thank you very much. Gator J, as always, you are amazing. So for everybody, I'm Jorge, and we'll catch you next week.